Is there something you could know that would change the way you feel?
Just kidding, I'm not mad because I'm not a jealous bitch.
So I guess mathematical analogies, slightly less odious than sports analogies. I've been talking to a mathematician lately, and some of my best friends are mathematicians, okay? And in a recent video, spontaneously, I just said, look, there's a real difference between math on the chalkboard and then math, how we use it in real life, in making moral and political arguments.
Yeah.
Okay? There is something similar to be said about philosophy. So I've had videos in the past, the relatively remote and distant past, talking about, what does it mean to have a philosophy? Why would anyone bother to have a philosophy? The other day I was talking to you about philosophy of language. Is it even really possible to have a philosophy of language, or why would one? But look, people come to philosophy because they want to change. And I think the most basic premise, or the most basic unstated assumption of philosophy, is that there is a connection between knowing and feeling. If I change what I know, I can change how I feel, and then I can change how I act. So an easy one would be cowardice. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have a kind of philosophical examination of what it is I feel afraid of, and then I'm going to overcome cowardice. A much more difficult one, I think, would be jealousy, right? And we've talked a lot about jealousy on this channel. I seem to be in a small minority of people who don't feel jealousy. We don't study math for the sake of filling up the chalkboard with numbers.
Yeah, how it can be applied to.
But we're doing it to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
Presumably problems in our lives. If not, what kind of problems?
Right.
Maybe problems in someone else's lives. Maybe it is something else. Maybe you want to land a spacecraft on the moon, but nevertheless, you want to solve some kind of problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, why do we come to philosophy? I think that's really the sincere answer: is that we're trying to solve problems, and with philosophy, they're problems that lie outside of, other provinces.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, the other day you did record. I think you made 2 attempts, which is unusual for you to record a video about your philosophy of language, and I think there was some disconnect when I was trying to, just take in what you were talking about with philosophy of language, because I mean, some of these concepts are foreign, and that's why, foreign to me, and that's partly what drew me into your channel, because I didn't know about all these.
Right.
I just didn't even know the extent.
Yeah. But it's not easy.
Yeah. No, it's not. But
I don't know if I make it look easy, but it's not.
Yeah.
Right.
You do make it look easy. I mean, it's challenging. Right. It's challenging to number one to understand a philosophy, but also
let's do a real quick thought experiment. So this is a very crude example, but you'll see why I use it. Let's say you had a soldier who was terrified. He was cowardly. He was experiencing fear on the battlefield. And you asked him, okay, look, let's do a thought experiment. What could you know? If you could know something that would reassure you and make you feel fearless, not make you feel afraid, what would you need to know? Here's a really depressing answer that unfortunately has thousands of years of evidence backing it. Maybe the soldier would say to you, oh, well, if I knew that it was impossible that I would die, or that if I die, I'm given immortal life, that it's only an illusion, that there is no death, or maybe if you told me that I'm special, that everyone else could die, it's not going to happen to me, that there's an exception to the rule in my case.
I'm such a good warrior, there's no way.
Yeah, then maybe that would alleviate.
I'm very impervious to the swords of other men.
Or hey, I'm going to give you an amulet. I'm going to give you this special amulet. You're going to wear it around your neck, and that, so maybe something totally false like this. So maybe there is something you could know that would change how you feel.
Yeah.
Depressing, but maybe a conversation worth having. Okay, if your problem is jealousy, what is it that you could know that would take this away? Now, look, I don't think, we don't have to upload this if you don't want to. Your ex-boyfriend took her boyfriend she was with before me, took the approach of telling you that you are the most beautiful woman in the world.
Yeah.
And that's really like giving you this amulet, right? Like you're the one soldier on the battlefield. Like no. And and he really told you were the most beautiful woman in the world, and nobody else is trying to. And look, jealousy isn't just about appearance. I mean, can be you're the most intelligent. You're the most special. Hey, you're God's chosen people.
But the soldier that is told, or that wants to build himself up, build up his confidence by saying, I'm immortal, or I'm the special one. I think he knows it's not true.
Well, if he really believes in mainstream religion like Catholicism or Islam, right? I mean, this is,
You're right. You're right. I was just going to compare it in the same way. I knew, even though my former partner, my ex-boyfriend, was telling me this, and it's not true, of course.
So on some level.
Objectively, no, of course, I wasn't deluded about that. It was to him, you
just believed in
that. I believed that to him, I was like his ideal, so that made me feel more confident.
Right.
I mean, what is it that would make you feel less jealous? What is it
Right. So in terms of my not feeling jealous, by the way, remember, so I'm 40 years old.
Yeah.
I maybe started learning Chinese at 36. I mean, try to figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are all kinds of white men who started learning Chinese at 16.
Right.
I'm never going to compete at their level. Now, I do get a lot of compliments, like, oh, wow, your knowledge of Chinese is very precise. It's, I do get a lot of compliments on how well I know or how well I can use Chinese, whether it's on my handwriting or my understanding the language, right? And that reflects different things about my character and the other languages I studied before. But I've studied a series of languages, so I'm never going to be the best at Chinese. And, I've told you, I had conversations with professors where I just said to them, look, you must realize I'm never going to be a Chinese literature professor or something. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm never going to,
Yeah.
It's not possible for me to compete with native speakers of the language, like interpreting Saturday morning cartoons in Chinese, which, believe me, is a lot of what goes on in Western academia. Right. Anime dominates Asian studies.
Right. Okay, you don't see many professors in the Department of English that are ESL, English as a second language.
What a lot of people presume to be a source of ego for me, or egoic fortitude, or whatever. On the contrary, I can regard in a down-to-earth way as being kind of perpetually humiliating. I'm perpetually a student, and I'm cool with that. I'm not jealous of people who are, So, look, this is the difference between religion and philosophy. If we ask the soldier, what do you need to know to feel fearless? And he doesn't care if it's true or false. Oh, okay, magic amulet, you go to heaven after you die, you're special, okay. Well, that's religion, okay. If we actually want to solve the problem, if we actually want real answers to the problems, we care about the answer true and false, then it's not religion anymore, then it's philosophy, you see?
Yeah.
Well, so that's the problem, right? Like so this is, again, even if the solution were, for my girlfriend's jealousy, to tell you, don't worry, babe, you're the most beautiful woman.
Well, no, that's a lie.
To me, that's also a lie, right?
It's a lie.
Right,
It's a lie to you.
I don't think, right, yeah.
Yeah, like, you are not somebody who, like, I'm not your ideal.
I'm not the most beautiful. I don't think you're that great a musician either. Like, I wouldn't tell you you're the greatest musician in the world. I had fun. We did one music video. We could do another one. I don't lie to people that way. I don't lie to you that way.
Yeah, I'm not. Right. And I'm not the most beautiful woman in the world. I'm not. And, like, I grew up thinking I was one of the ugliest. Like, I know you said I'm not ugly, but I'm not attractive. I'm not a fucking model, of course.
So what? This is my question. So, given this whole background, what could you know? Believe me, I'm assuming we don't really have an answer. Is there something you could know that would change the way you feel?
Okay, so when I first was starting university, and I would go on Tumblr, there's this general undercurrent of telling everybody that they're beautiful.
Right.
So, that's what I'm saying you would need to know, that you're beautiful, no matter what, that's...
Okay. To me, that's the most ridiculous thing. To me, that's the most ridiculous thing.
Oh, I agree.
Okay, all right. I'm asking for a real answer. I'm asking for a sincere answer. But even if you look within your own family. So I come from a big family. You know your cousins and stuff too.
Yeah.
You can't say all your cousins are equally beautiful. I can't say all my brothers and sisters are equally beautiful. It's ridiculous. I mean, okay, if you say people say it on Tumblr and that solves the problem.
No, I'm not saying it solves the problem.
Sorry. That's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to actually solve the problem.
Okay.
I'm not asking you to lie. What do you think?
So the problem, what? Okay, so
I'm talking about a sincere. Do you want me to restate the question? What would you have to know that would actually change how you feel? What's knowable? What's possible? How can knowing change feeling in relation to jealousy? Look, I knew a guy, I won't say who it was. He was a white American, and he had his bicycle stolen by a group of black people, African Americans. And he really got racist. Obviously, he probably was inclined to be racist to some extent before. I don't know. Okay? And that's a conversation you can have with people. Many of you watch this with us where we talk through with someone. Look, I know you had this a bad experience, etc. What do I have to tell you? How are we going to break this down so that you don't blame millions of people for the actions of whatever was 4 or 5 guys? Like, can I talk through with you? Like, maybe it is as simple as, oh yeah, I had my bike stolen once. It was by white people. What am I going to do now? Go through the whole rest of my life with a chip on my shoulder against white people? Are you going to be able to talk that through as a thought experiment? Is there something he can know that's going to change the way he feels? Not something he believes, right? Not like a logical tenet, right? My father talked about this before. I've mentioned this on the channel. The idea of attitudinal learning and attitudinal change. What if what I'm trying to do is not burden you with a series of specific dates from history? I want to change your attitude towards that history. Like, I didn't realize, like, in the history of Canada, really the wars between the French and English, they were fought decisively by native people. This is an early period of our history where really what mattered were indigenous people and their role in history as mercenaries and stuff. Like, this is an attitude shift. And why do you want to do that? Because in Canada we have a lot of white people, who say that native people didn't contribute anything to the history of the country. It's very commonly said in Canada. Okay, so you want to change this attitude. Can knowing this change the way you feel? Now, for some people it can't, right? And I think that shows something too. So, like, if you have the same conversation about racism, the one guy who has the bad experience with black people, and somebody else who has bad experience with native people, I think if you get to the point where you say, no, there's nothing I can tell you, there's nothing you can know that's going to change the way you feel, right? I mean, maybe at that point we finally are talking about, insanity. We're talking about a kind of pathology,
I guess what you'd have to know is that everybody's experience is different. Everybody's conditions are different when you come into this world, and what you put into your life is what you will get out from it. And life is unfair. I mean, I can think of ways to change the way that I would feel, change my feelings of jealousy.
In a recent video, I said that my own philosophy, it's like being aware all the time that your house is on fire, and then asking, well, how can you be watering the lawn? How can you be enjoying life when you know your house is on fire? And even if it's not your house that's on fire, there's somebody else's house that's on fire. This sense of any kind of self-indulgence needing to be justified. Now, by the way, just real brief example, I even feel the way about going to the gym. Like, I feel like lifting weights up to a certain point is justified by the sense of preparedness, of being able to go out and put out fires, cope with emergency situations, cope with the problems of the world. Like I can't make a positive contribution to the suffering of the world if I'm not in a certain level of physical condition myself.
Yeah.
But I mean, I gave you the example the other day of a handsome guy on YouTube. Believe me, I'm not complaining. His whole career is being a handsome guy and dating a model, and her whole career is just being a beautiful woman. That's all they do. So in some ways, their lives have been made easy by being born beautiful. Born and raised beautiful, however you want to put it. Right? When I actually look at them, so I watch one of their videos for reasons not worth describing, I actually feel a lot of sympathy. Like, I don't feel jealousy, but like I see their lives as a struggle. I see a lot of sorrow and suffering and hard work in their lives. And even like the two of them as a couple, and they I see their lives as a struggle. Like I don't know. I mean, for me, in terms of what I know and how I feel, I do think that a really, really deep sense that life is suffering. It's the same with like when I talk to left wingers who hate the rich. Sometimes like it's only happened a couple times. I've talked to people who are left wing or communists, and you ask them, do you really know what life is like for the rich? Like, do you really think they're happy? Like, do you really think they're kind of dancing on the graves of the working people? Like, do you know what it's like to be a factory owner? Like, have you thought about it? Have you really, you can watch a film. Like, their lives are also full of tremendous sorrow and suffering and struggling. Not that I'm saying it's equal, not that I'm saying it's the same. And of course, you can take an example of someone starving in the most extreme poverty and then someone living in the most extreme wealth. But most entrepreneurs, most people who have over $1 million, their lives have terrible sorrow and suffering. In South Korea, there was a commonplace statement. There was a name of a young woman, and she was born the daughter. I think I do remember the corporation. I'm not going to name the corporation. She was born the daughter of a multi-millionaire corporate director, corporate CEO, and her whole life was miserable, and she committed suicide. And there was some series of heartbreak and tragedy living up to it. But her name in South Korea became synonymous with. People would say, look, like the rich have problems too. Whatever it is, even if you want to use something corny like heart attacks and cancer and stuff. Is it easier for the rich? Well, I just say, that kind of jealousy. Again, I'd like to think that for most people, most of the time, it can be challenged by just knowing more about what's on the other side of that divide. Like, do you think maybe knowing more about, the lives, it may sound absurd, but maybe knowing more about the lives of beautiful people? I don't know. Like I said to you before, and you were surprised by it, you said, that your whole life is so much easier if you're just born beautiful. And I said, well,
yeah,
it's also more dangerous. You're a target for rape, from a very early age. You're a target for violence. You're a target for jealousy, which comes back to the main topic here. Other people can be cruel to you and demanding and so on. In some ways, your life is easier, but and we know people whose whole intellectual potential has been snuffed out by the fact that they're good looking. Not going to name names. People where it's had a destructive effect on their lives. And this is discussed in Plato to a limited extent. I remember medieval source Castiglione, the Book of the Courtier. It's actually an ancient and medieval topic of debate. To what extent are beautiful people evil because they're corrupted by society? And to what extent are they evil because they're evil, because it's in their nature? And what most of the debates conclude is that society has such a powerfully corrupting effect on beautiful people that, beauty, the power it gives you in society, corrupts, so to speak.
I should read that.
That you can never really know how inwardly evil beautiful people are, because this is such a powerful warping factor.
Yeah. Well, I want to stay on topic, but you know, I don't know how much. Cause when we were just with your daughter,
right?
I was like having this, you know, she was being really sweet and loving with me, and you know, we were just having a moment, and I was kind of like rubbing rubbing her hair, like I was running my fingers through her hair, and I said, "Your hair is so beautiful." Like, you know, I was kind of just you know, being sweet and joking around, and I was like, oh, one day maybe you could be a hair model, you know. And I really was thinking, like, you know, there really are like hair models.
I know.
You know, like I wasn't, you know, saying, but you know, I regretted it saying it later because no,
you really thought this isn't something you should say to a kid. I remember.
No,
Yeah.
It's not what you should say to a kid. And I do wonder from a young age how you approach this inequality, and I think what you said here is very true. If you think of the other side and use philosophy as a problem-solving tool, and
at least we'll come to a very distinct knowledge of what the problem is.
Using sympathy as an analytical tool to think about the other side. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and when I think of it that way, it definitely changes my perspective.
We will see. Jealousy has been a huge issue on this channel since day one. It's been a huge issue in this relationship. So maybe this is the first of many sequels to come.